When I check in on Facebook, one of my groups is my high school class. This is a group of old people. And you can see that there are people who have chosen to work on their stuff. They've chosen to have room to be happy. And there are people who are resentful then who are such a mess now. Margaret will never see this video, and I will say that every one of her posts is just bitter, sad, horrible. She talks about how everyone mistreats her, that her life is terrible, that she spends her days complaining about everything that is bad and wrong. And I just know, reading her posts, that no one wants to be near her. So then it makes it even worse, because when you're bitter, you're lonely. And one of the things that really sucks when you're old is being lonely, because then that makes your brain go. So then you have dementia, and then you get even more paranoid. It's like this whole bad circuit of things that goes out of control, starting with the simple act of resenting someone. Who do you resent? Do you resent the people who talk over you, or the people who diss you, whether or not they mean it, or the people who are always late, or the people who don't actually pay attention to you? They don't really hear you. You don't feel acknowledged in the world. What about the relatives who said something to you when you were a child that you never get over? And I bet you have resentment of your coworkers. It still happens. It happened back in the day, and it happens now, where there's a coworker who somehow didn't notice that an idea was yours, and then they say it again, and everyone's like, oh, that's a great idea. Ugh, resentment. In this video, Granny's going to teach you how to tame that beast we call resentment, or at least put a leash on it, right? So you can get it back on its stool and it can sit there and not bug you so much. When I started working on resentment, I realized there were some tips that were new to me and might be new to you. And since I've been working with them, they've really helped. And I know they help other people. And I'm promising that they have a good chance of helping you. And I can't wait to hear, if you have a moment, to comment if you try one of them, if they work for you too. Let's talk for a minute about the difference between resentment and anger. Anger is quick. It can be a quick flare. When I think about anger, I think about those old school matchboxes that have something on the side, and you strike a wooden match and there's this quick flame, and it burns really fast and it burns really hot. And if we're lucky, that kind of anger can burn out really fast. So anger is fast and you can get over it fast. Resentment, on the other hand, doesn't flare up fast and it doesn't go away fast. Resentment lives inside us. We'll talk about that more. There's this metaphor that's really disgusting, but I haven't found a better one. So I'm going to share it with you, and I hope the cringe factor doesn't make you go away. Basically, the idea about resentment is that you feel resentment, and so you drink rat poison and wait for the rat to die. Ugh, bleh. But true, right? Why are we talking about resentment? What's the problem with resentment? The thing about resentment is that, like all the other negative emotions, resentment steals life. Resentment is a thief of joy. Resentment keeps us from being present and able to connect to our purpose in life, to our work, to our friends, to our family, because we're busy dealing with our resentment. I was surprised when I was doing research for this video. I ran across some excerpts from what's called the Big Book in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I think is great because, in my opinion, the principles of AA are about living a rich and powerful life, and not just for people who have addictions and have to deal with substance abuse. Anyway, in the Big Book, in AA meetings, the number one enemy for the addict? You want to guess? Do you think it's jealousy, envy, any shame, all that stuff we've talked about before? No, it's resentment. Resentment. Are you surprised about that? I was. And then I thought about it and I thought, oh, I really get how resentment is a trigger for addictive behavior, because when I feel resentment, what I want is for it to stop. What you want when you feel resentment, I'm guessing at some point, is you want it to stop. And if you're an addict, what you do is you take whatever your substance is to numb out. I think to some degree we all use substances to numb out, right? I use sugar. A lot of us use sugar. A lot of us use social media. We use things to numb our feelings instead of feeling them. And resentment is one that is so pervasive that we spend a lot of time trying to numb out. Everyone feels resentment because we are not secure in ourselves and we are looking to other people for affirmation and acknowledgement. And when we feel unseen, unheard, unacknowledged, disrespected, all of those things cause us to creep into the little doubts, the little cracks in our self-confidence. And that makes us feel unsteady, unmoored, unhappy. And so we direct that feeling toward them. We resent them when it's really, our feelings are about us. We can't change them. And if we put it on them, it feels like it's easier, but it's not. It just means that we haven't done the work on ourselves and we're sentenced to living life, I'm not going to say in a prison, but living life in a container that's smaller than it could be. Here is this very fancy drawing I did for you. This is a cow. She has 1, 2, 3, 4 stomachs. 4 stomachs. And one of her stomachs is called her rumen. She's got a rumen. And the thing is, you see, she's eating grass. My excellent grass drawing. She eats the grass, and the grass goes down her esophagus, which goes both ways, and into her rumen. And it sits there. And if it isn't really digested, it comes actually back up and goes into her mouth. And that's why they say she's chewing her cud. Who needs cud up? Her cud is stuff that she hasn't really digested, and it sits in one of her stomachs. And that's, when you see cows just sort of standing around looking like they're doing nothing, she's actually working hard. She's digesting her food. Now, this is the part I thought was so cool and so amazing. The word ruminate comes from, you guessed it, rumen. So what we do is when we get resentful, one of the things that can happen is that we ruminate. So our brain is like a cow's stomach. So she has stuff that goes back and forth, right, that she's working on. We get resentful. We have resentment, and we're chewing on it, chewing on it, chewing on it, chewing on it. And I thought, so in a way, the British speak to this, and one of the things that they say, is sort of a casual thing. I watch British detective shows on television, and a loving comment to a woman of my age is, you silly old cow, like I'm an old cow. And then I thought, yeah, I am a silly old cow, because if I'm ruminating on things, I'm exactly like a cow. Since I learned this, now that I'm working on noticing when I'm resentful, I can also say to myself when I am ruminating on that, stop chewing your cud. You're chewing it in your brain. You got to spit it out, swallow it, deal with it, pass it through. Don't need that cud clogging up your brain. I'm back. I'm obsessed with the cow stomach and the brain. So if she's eating nasty stuff and she can't really digest, then she's going to get sick and die, our friend the cow. If we have a brain full of resentment and we ruminate and ruminate and ruminate, it adjusts our view of the world so that everything is bad. It kind of spills over from the original thing we were resentful about to being resentful of everything, resentful of life. And that's why you can see a difference in people my age, where there are some people who end up really bitter. I have known them where they're just bitter, 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 or they've done their work and they're happy. And it's a key driver in how long you live and how you live. And I say it's a driver in how long you live because when you ruminate a lot, it creates anxiety and depression and things that aren't good for your body. So it is a truly unhealthy habit. And it's a habit. I mean, the thing to remember about living with resentment, and a particular resentment day after day after day, is it's a feeling, but it's also a habit. You're in the habit of letting yourself do that. Another tip is take action. Do something about whatever it is that's making you resentful. And it doesn't have to be something that has anything to do directly with the person who's caused you to feel resentful. An example of this that I love is Reese Witherspoon. She got tired of being talked over, not listened to, not treated with the respect she felt she deserved by producers and by Hollywood in general. And the action she took was to start her own company called Hello Sunshine, and she produced some really phenomenal stuff. In fact, I make it a practice to try to find things that Reese has produced because I know I'm going to like them. She sold Hello Sunshine not that long ago, in the relatively recent past, and she sold it for $900 million. Let me say that again. $900 million. She felt resentful. She was like, okay, let me do something about this. Now, I think it's fair to round up to $1 billion. So let's say she made $1 billion off of feeling resentful. But there's something even better than that. Some of that money, and I think probably a fair percentage of it, she has reinvested and other women taking action. And it is healing to take action, not just for yourself, but for others. My doing YouTube videos is my attempt to take action and to say, I need to do something about this. And by the way, if I can figure things out that work for me and share them with other women and other people who are working and feeling resentful, that makes me feel better. The goal of making you feel better is a cure for resentment. I gotta tell you, I'm sitting here talking to you about resentment, and we had to reshoot it because Pop Pops is laughing so hard at a video he's watching that he's shaking all over. Tears are running down his face. He's got his hands over his face. He's trying to keep it together and he can't because he's laughing so hard. He's 82. That's what you want to be when you're 82. If you start life, if you're young and you decide that you don't want to deal with resentment and you don't want to deal with negative emotions and it's just too much trouble, and besides, it's their fault anyway, you're going to end up, I guarantee it, I am sorry, it is 100% true that you will end up not laughing until you have tears streaming down your face, but old and bitter. And I see this when I check in on Facebook. One of my groups is my high school class, and there are people who participate regularly who went to high school with me, which is more than 50 years ago, right? So this is a group of old people. And you can see that there are people who have chosen to work on their stuff. They've chosen to have room to be happy. And there are people who are resentful then who are such a mess now. Margaret will never see this video, and I will say that every one of her posts is just bitter, sad, horrible. She talks about how everyone mistreats her, that her life is terrible, that she spends her days complaining about everything that is bad and wrong. And I just know, reading her posts, that no one wants to be near her. So then it makes it even worse, because when you're bitter, you're lonely. And one of the things that really sucks when you're old is being lonely, because then that makes your brain go. So then you have dementia, and then you get even more paranoid. It's like this whole bad circuit of things that goes out of control, starting with the simple act of resenting someone. And then it just spirals out and you end up in a bad place. So my job as a granny and a mentor is to say to you, get over that early. It's like saving money early. The earlier you learn how to deal with this stuff, the happier you're going to be for the rest of your life. And honestly, don't you want happy decades instead of ones that you spend feeling bad about other people and yourself?